Hi, I'm Minotaur. Gun balance is an interesting topic in Siege because Ubisoft feels the need to mess around with balanced guns every patch. But why? In an effort to understand the bizarre balance changes we keep getting, let's take a deeper look into guns in Siege to learn more about what makes them unique from each other and how they can be balanced. Starting off rather generic, assault rifles are the most common weapon type among attackers. Defenders don't actually get them. I did check. Stuff like Vigil's K1A is classified by Ubisoft as an SMG. Regardless, there are various stats that contribute to weapon balance. I'm sure I don't need to explain them as they are exactly what they say on the tin. Rate of fire and capacity aren't usually changed by Ubisoft as far as I'm aware, but they still influence gun balance as a whole. Optics on guns play an important role, especially within the current meta. Magnifying optics allow you to take on gunfights at greater distance easier. The downside is that you'll lack peripheral vision, and enemies that are close will be harder to get into your scope. This is why the 1.5x is so powerful. More versatile for taking on enemies at range, but not so zoomed in that peripheral vision becomes an issue. Modifying the damage stat on an assault rifle has much more of an impact than it does on an SMG, for an example. Slower fire rate means that every bullet counts when using an assault rifle. Recoil control is messed with sometimes. A lot of the time it hardly changes anything, like when they nerfed the commando a while back. Changes that make the gun harder to control can have a pretty sizable impact on guns, as it's much harder to hit a headshot and engaging in longer range gunfights is less viable. Both fire rate and ammo capacity aren't changed much, but still contribute to gun balance. Rate of fire is largely dependent on the weapon, from just under 700 rounds a minute to almost 1,000. Ammo capacity is more or less taking prolonged gunfights, or more of them. The Type 89 isn't great for a lengthy gunfight, but the V308 with almost double the ammo definitely is. SMGs are pretty similar to assault rifles, and are mostly on defense, but there are some on attack as well. As SMGs are much more common on defense, optics are much more rare on SMGs. Among the defenders, only 12 have a 1.5x on an SMG. As you're playing on the defender's turf, the 1.5x is much more broken, as competent defenders will force you into gunfights that favor them much more than you. SMGs have less damage than assault rifles, but usually make up for it in rate of fire. A little less damage doesn't really matter when you're shooting many more bullets downrange. Rate of fire is therefore pretty important for SMGs, but this isn't to say that damage is an irrelevant stat. It just isn't your main focus. Ammo capacity is still something to consider, as some weapons like the P10 Roni or SMG-11 have rather small mags, so unless you drop the enemy with your first couple of shots, you'll most likely have to reload. The P90 doesn't have this problem and can engage a couple opponents before a reload becomes necessary. You've also got the LMG. There are LMGs with both high and low damage, and high and low fire rate. One thing that always stays the same is the fact that they've got a lot of ammo. There isn't really a cookie-cutter technique to balance LMGs because they're all so different. LMGs should be compared to either assault rifles or SMGs depending on their stats and balanced from there. The drawback from having a 150 round belt is that you take several business days to reload, and due to the fact that reload cancelling isn't a thing anymore, this is a big deal breaker for LMGs sometimes. I'd say that we're done with automatic weapons, but that's not quite true. The ACS-12 is a fully automatic shotgun that will serve as a nice segue, but after I briefly explain something. There are generally two types of shotguns, with your average game shotguns that aren't realistic, and then your slug shotguns. Slug shotguns like the ACS-12 or Boss G are incredibly unique weapons. They have extremely high damage and don't have to worry about spread like other shotguns. ACS-12 two-shots everyone in the game and has a 50 round drum. It's held back by the slowest fire rate out of every automatic weapon, but still. The Boss G is just a meme weapon. Aside from the fact that you can one-shot someone from impressive ranges, it's garbage. The rest of the shotguns have your stereotypical shotgun spread. Aiming decreases the gun spread because video game. Interestingly enough, shotguns are the only type of weapon in the game that don't have a one-shot headshot mechanic. Instead, they have a modifier allowing them to do extra damage on a headshot. If you try to snipe someone with a shotgun, they won't just drop dead because a pellet struck them in the left ear. Another interesting thing to consider is that fire rate is just grayed out for them. Pump action shotgun takes a second to pump, and therefore requires good damage output to ensure that it has a good kill time. This generally means that it's instant at closer ranges. Shotguns that don't need to pump like the M1014 can shoot more often and therefore can be given both less damage and wider spread to compensate. An important aspect that shotguns have is destructive capabilities. The ability to make rotates and kill holes makes shotguns not just a weapon but a utility. The fact a shotgun performs poorly at range is offset by the fact that giving your team a proper sight setup can allow your team as a whole to do better within the round. That being said, sight setup isn't really something attackers need to worry about, and they need to close the distance to get into sight. So shotguns are a great tool for defense, but for attack they're generally kinda crap. Next up we have DMRs. They don't have a set fire rate just like shotguns. They can still fire quite fast though, almost as fast as you can click. As DMRs lack fire rate, they therefore require high damage to ensure a good time to kill, just like shotguns. Spread isn't a problem though, allowing DMRs to still pack a good punch at range. The low fire rate can actually work in the DMR's favor, as you have less bullets leaving your barrel and therefore less recoil to account for, enabling the user to deliver a few strong shots at range instead of fighting their gun. The DMR generally does need low recoil per shot to be viable though, as if it isn't and therefore only useful at close range, the shotgun will serve the user better. A good sight for the DMR is very important, as ranged encounters are where the DMR shines. In close quarters, assault rifles or SMGs can spray a lot more bullets in the direction of your noggin. They also have some good destructive capabilities, although worse than a shotgun. The beams in the walls don't get destroyed, but the rest of the wall does, allowing the user to create sightlines from a distance safely. DMRs can still open hatches though, which can be pretty useful. There's a single sniper rifle in the game and it's used by Cali. It's crap. I mean, it's bolt action in a close quarters game. I don't care how good you think your aim is, this objectively makes zero sense to add. One-shotting people is satisfying, I guess, and it can usually do that. The only redeeming factor of this gun is that it one-shots people unless you hit their armor leg. Last up we have pistols, which are always secondaries unless you're playing a shield operator. Pistols are split into two main types, with generic single-shot pistols and machine pistols. Machine pistols are essentially just small SMGs. C75 Auto has stats you'd expect to see from a regular SMG, but we can't have that as this is a secondary, so we take away your right to see what you're aiming at. More conventional pistols are more or less balanced on damage and mag size. They don't tend to drop you, but are only really useful if you're being pushed and don't have time to reload your primary. Pistol choice is either just this is what you're being given, which is kind of lame, or this one two-shots people, but this other one has a good bit of ammo. There you have it. You should now know more or less when a buffer nerf changes nothing, and what gun to choose on an operator if you already didn't. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again. See ya.